South West Regional launch of the Enough Food for Everyone in campaign. Welcome. So glad that you're all part of the campaign, you're all signed up to it. My name's Nigel Corral, I'm the West Regional Manager of Christian Aid, one of over 100 organisations, agencies, churches, faith groups, whatever, who are part of this campaign, and you're representing them this morning, so thank you, each one of you, for coming. So.
We look at economics in terms of GDP, in terms of GVA, in terms of a very narrow measurement, and it appalls me that we don't look at it in a much broader way that looks at what the effects of what we're doing are on other people, and so I think what you're doing is really important, is opening people's eyes to what really matters. And that if we waste food here, if we're greedy here, like the supermarkets waste a huge amount of food, the restaurants waste a huge amount of food, the old attitude of cleaning your plate and finishing everything on it because you should be thinking of the starving people elsewhere in the world, seems to be one that has disappeared in many people's language. And so the raising of awareness, I think, is vitally important. So I welcome that. But we have to make a huge shift, as is shown on this film. It's shocking that there is enough food for people to eat in the world. It's shocking that that local farmers across the world are losing their land and the ability for them to grow food for themselves because it's being exploited by big organisations that are taking it out of their communities and out of their country. I'm certainly keen on Bristol playing its part in championing what you're doing and in playing its part in making noises around the G8 meeting in June. So I'll be an ally. I think Bristol should be making sure that it's encouraging all its restaurants and other organisations to get involved with Fairtrade. I think it's really important that Fairtrade is real Fairtrade. I think there's always a danger that people jump onto bandwagons and use the logos and use the title as a bit of a airbrushing of what's going on. I think it's really important that we understand the difference between real fair trade and fair trade that is simply a marketing exercise. So let's make it fundamental. Let's make quite sure that in June we make a real difference. And citizens of Bristol make a difference.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Presentation for you, a badge and a wristband. And I think you're welcome. It's right. Brilliant. Yes.
Wildlife Trust are supporting the Petition Fish campaign at the moment, and both of those had events in Parliament over the last week or so. And you have these huge trawlers that, you know, they're whatever you call them, it's almost like huge rakes that go along the seabed, they're 3 miles wide or whatever. It's almost like underground factories, and they even, on the ships, once they've caught, you know, millions of fish, they actually have a canning process where they churn out cans of tuna or whatever. And so you have this real push towards treating food production and the growing of food as an industrial process, and yet we know that we shouldn't be looking to produce more food. You know, there is enough food being produced in the world to feed everyone. It's a distribution issue. It's about the type of food. It's about sustainability. Because if you have this type of industrial fishing, what you end up, which is what we're seeing now, is the fishing stocks will have disappeared within a few years' time. We just had an announcement this week that mackerel is now considered, I don't think they use the term endangered, but you know, it's in short supply and people shouldn't eat mackerel or whatever to increase the stocks for a while. And I just think it's what we need to do with this campaign is to get across to people that, yeah, there is enough food to feed people. It's about the distribution of food, it's about the way we use food, it's things like, one of the things I'm slightly frustrated about in the campaign is the emphasis on biofuels, because actually when you look at, I'm also Shadow Minister for Latin America, and when you look at what's happening in a lot of Central American and Southern American countries, is vast swathes of land are being used to grow soya for livestock feed. And there was this really silly article in The Guardian the other day that was something like, can vegans eat quinoa with a clear conscience, because it means that people in Bolivia are starving because they can't afford to buy their staple thing. And there was just like everything wrong with it at every single point down the line. But you know, one of the things that was eventually said in a footnote, because they said, oh yeah, vegans, all this land is being used for soya production, and it's all the vegans that are eating all the soya. And then it said, finally in a footnote, actually 97% of the world's soya goes towards feeding livestock. And actually, and it's, I don't know the figures, but there's been so much emphasis on biofuels, and yeah, there's real concern about that. But actually, the livestock issue, the feeding grain to livestock, is more of an issue. It's more of the land is being used for that. So there's the whole issue, you know, in Oxfam have obviously had its land grabs campaign. There's the issue of land use, as you said, there's the issue about corruption and tax evasion and so on. And there's very, very simple things, just like trying to put infrastructure in place to make sure that people can not only feed their own communities but can get goods to market and export it. There's the issue of monocrops, and that's something that came up in the quinoa article. Again, you go to Kenya and their biggest export is flowers. But if you're growing flowers in a village, that's okay for the people that are working on the flower plantations, have got paid jobs there, although it's low-paid jobs. That doesn't actually feed the people of Kenya that would have been subsistence farmers in those areas before. So I think there's so much, you know, this whole ties in the whole thing of food miles, and should we really be exporting flowers from Kenya instead of allowing them to grow food that feeds themselves. So there's so many issues, you know, common agricultural policy, common fisheries policy, the extent to which we subsidise things that we probably shouldn't be spending public money on subsidising. So I think it's absolutely great that there's going to be a focus on food this year. The G8 is always frustrating as we saw at Glen Eagles, you know, everybody signs up, in terms of the countries, you know, Britain has stuck by its commitment, but a lot of the other countries haven't, or tried to wriggle out of it. So we do need really, really strong international leadership on this. And the final thing I'd say is writing to MPs does actually matter. People do notice. some MPs, I think, ignore the automated emails. And well, they ignore them and they don't reply to them. But if, say, you know, like on the forest issue, selling off a forest, I had about 300 emails. I know that Stephen Williams had about 1,200. Now, even if he doesn't reply to them, you've got to notice that 1,200 people care enough about an issue to send something in. And so I think, you know, the more pressure you can put on people, the more specific you can be in your asks as well, about, you know, not just make this a priority, but if there's things, incremental things that you think you can ask people to do, even if it's just at a very local level, that's really important. So I think it's quite exciting that it's happening, and I think we really can sort of achieve the... the final thing I said, the food waste. I introduced a food waste bill in Parliament last year, and I've got a Facebook site in it. But that that side of things as well, you know, up to 50% of the food that is produced in the world is wasted, and a lot of the focus tends to be on consumers, because that's what the supermarkets and the retailers want you to think, that it's actually just people throwing food away because they don't know how to make stew or whatever out of their leftover vegetables. But actually there's a huge issue in terms of supermarkets wasting food, and obviously that cost has got to be passed on to somewhere, it's passed on to the consumer. And I think, you know, pushing at that side of things as well is really good.
Great. Thanks very much, Kerry. Govinda at Oxfam has been doing a great job with press releases and drawing together our press, hasn't she? So we want her to be able to get it out through all the other organisations. So we need your information so we can send you that stuff. So please sign up if you haven't already